Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio and in that studio via Zoom. Patrick, thanks so much for being on the program this morning. I can't wait to find out more about American Federation for Children. Welcome.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Okay, so the other day we had a piece that I found in the New York Post, and it said 52 million students could get Freedom Scholarships, including over $2.5 million in New York State. You know I say dollars too much when you see millions. 2.5 million individuals in New York State. So that caught my eye, and that's why I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. So let's first start with American Federation for Children. What is that if we're not familiar?
Yeah, so we are the nation's largest voice for school choice, we like to say. So we are a school choice group that are interested in parents getting the full range of options available for their kids and their kids' educations, whether that's a great public school, a great charter school, or a great private school, making those options available across the country. So we've had a lot of success in recent years, especially since COVID. A lot of parents really woke up and found that their schools weren't doing what they thought they were, and that they needed some other options, or that school just wasn't simply a good fit or fitting their kids' needs. So we're involved across the country, kind of helping make sure that this option is available for families.
And how did you specifically get started with the organization? What made this kind of your passion, if you will?
Yeah, so I started as a third grade teacher, actually. So I was a former classroom teacher. I taught in a private school down in Florida in the early days of the Florida tax credit scholarship. So this is before, now we have 17 states where every student in the state is eligible for a private school choice program, so could attend any school of their choice. Right. At that time, there were zero that had universal eligibility. And Florida was kind of one of these states that went ahead and said, hey, what are some options we can put in front of families? And I happen to have, about a third of my classroom were all students, very low income, attending failing public schools, were able to transfer into our school using this scholarship program. And I just saw that it was transformative for both my kids and their parents, kind of talking to these young parents and just hearing about some of the schools that they were coming from and just being so thankful that they could be a part of our community. And so, I ended up going back to grad school and studying these kinds of programs for a living. So got into research, worked on statistics quite a bit, and that actually kind of translated into some of my current work where I do research and offer guidance on school choice policy for AFC.
When you hear about something like this, and I want to find out more about the Freedom Scholarship, but do you find that there's ever pushback? We've talked about charter schools on this program in the past and homeschooling, things like that, and there always seems to be opposition from teachers union. Is that something that you guys deal with at the American Federation for Children?
Unfortunately, it is a recurring theme across a number of the states that we're working in. And honestly, it's a big part of why our organization exists. I think in many states, I think people don't realize that, it's not the teachers, and I'm a huge teacher advocate. Sure. It's really these political representatives who will take on interests of their own that don't necessarily are serving the interests either of their teacher members or of the school system writ large. And they have a ton of political power. Right. Depending on your state, it can be very union dominated. Mm-hmm. And there is very little toleration from sometimes one side of the aisle sure. for any of their members to step out of line on this issue. So we're a nonpartisan organization. We support Democrats and Republicans that support school choice. But it's really hard, I think, particularly for Democrats to step out of line on this issue. And they will tell us behind closed doors, we actually love this issue, that we know that there are kids in my district that would really benefit from this, but I know if I vote for this bill, I will lose my job. Wow. And so there needs to be some kind of countervailing force kind of pushing against the amount of money. We are often outspent 10-1 by teacher unions. Sure. And that's a big barrier, but this is a popular issue. And so we have the people on our side, and we hope to just bring this to as many states as possible, which we're really excited. This new education freedom tax credit at the federal level has the opportunity to bring private school choice to states that have never had it before. So that's kind of honestly a really exciting piece of it.
Right, and like when you mentioned public or school choice, it's very popular, whether it's the charter school, whatever it is. This has always been a very popular issue, and that's what surprised me, that sometimes there is a fight on this. Because when I read the article, like you said, this is for charter schools, private, but also public school.
Yeah, I mean, this tax credit in particular is really an education tax credit for all kinds of scholarships. So the unions, when they talk about this tax credit, they will say this is a voucher program,
Right.
which is a just completely fabricated understanding of what this is even is. I mean, this is new dollars for education. For, as my report details, I mean, nearly 92% of kids across the country are income eligible for this new scholarship.
Wow.
And that's so right. That has to include vast majority public school students and charter and private school students. But what they object to is that small slice of students who are in private schools or would like to attend a private school who also get access to these scholarships.
Right.
But I think over time, and I think teachers and superintendents even of public school districts are realizing, hey, there's actually a huge opportunity here for us as well, because we know there's all kinds of extra academic services and needs that aren't being met, special education, extra support for reading, for example, that you could get scholarships from local scholarship granting organizations through that are funded through this tax credit to help those kids, and that's going to be in public schools. So I think 10 years from now, when this credit is fully scaled and continuing to grow, there's going to be, I think, a lot of folks are predicting it's going to be more public school students receiving scholarships through this than private school students. But I think there's a huge opportunity for private school families and also those who would seek some kind of other option to also take advantage of these scholarships as well. So I think it's really a win-win, and in my mind it makes no sense for governors to be hesitating on this, because they're always asking for more funding for education.
And here it is.
Funding for education is good.
Yeah.
This should be a great new policy for you to embrace.
Yes, and let's talk about that for a minute. So, education freedom tax credit. Now, as you said, the states have to sign on, and I saw this in the New York Post, like I mentioned, and you're talking about 2.5 million kids in New York State could benefit from this. Where are we at currently in New York State?
So New York State has, in terms of school choice, they have charter schools, but there's a cap on the number of those charter schools, and that has been a big political football at different times, wanting to shut some down, scale other ones. I mean, New York has some of the most successful charter schools in the country. In terms of the possibilities for choice in New York, I mean, it's just incredible, because many other states have come to New York to copy or to replicate the charter models that have started here. So in that sense, you can see that there's just a ton of potential for expanding this further, and there's always been these moneyed political interests that have really stood in the way of that. So I give a lot of credit in some ways for Governor Hochul going out and saying, hey, this actually just makes sense on a dollar for dollar basis for New Yorkers to opt into this program, and she has signaled that she will opt in. One of the few Democrat governors who has done that, in addition to Jared Polis of Colorado, who have just basically seen, hey, this is going to be good for our system overall and good for families. And she's made that commitment. So I think it's up to folks in New York now to make sure that she stays true to those words.
Sure.
And come January 1st, 2027, that's when paperwork has to be submitted to the federal treasury to officially opt New York in and take advantage of this.
So this is when you contact the governor's office and you say, great, right? We're so proud of you for making this decision. Let's just follow through on something as simple as paperwork. Because I guess my first initial reaction was a little bit of shock that Governor Hochul was accepting of it. But I love that she's given her kind of a verbal agreement on it. So let's take this the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in my mind, this is not a partisan issue across the country, like I said. And, my eligibility report kind of went through and detailed, how many kids could we potentially receive a scholarship in each of these states? And there's still 20 million kids in states that have not yet signaled that they will opt in. It's less than half of K-12 students in the country, but that's a huge number of kids. I think it's a wake-up call to other governors to look towards not only nearly every Republican governor at this point has said that they will jump into this, but also increasingly a number of their Democrat colleagues in governorships around the country saying, hey, this is a great opportunity for our state and for our students, and honestly for the future of their state. This is not just the short run impacts of these scholarships, but think about the long run returns for your economy, not only the investments in human capital and your students, but also these scholarships are going to go to organizations that are providing services, other nonprofits that are going to help drive economic growth in your state too.
Now, when it comes to kind of the time frame on this, if Governor Hochul gets the paper in on January 1st, how do students and parents get involved in it after that?
Yeah, so every state has to have an approved list of these scholarship organizations.
Okay.
So these are specifically nonprofits that are going to, that basically their main activity is giving scholarships. So New York actually already has a number of these.
I'm
that
sure
have
they do.
been in existence for quite some time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, because they've had to.
Yeah.
Right. You can think of these big organizations like Children's Scholarship Fund that has given these kind of like life-giving scholarships, especially to low-income families, to have access to private schools. They have always been extremely limited by the number of philanthropic dollars that they can raise with that federal tax deduction, where you're getting, maybe 15% off every dollar given. But with this new federal tax credit, it's a dollar for dollar federal tax credit back to you up to $1,700. Wow. So this is everyday working New Yorkers who give to this. Yeah. Any of your federal tax liability, you will get that donation up to $1,700 right off of your federal taxes, wow. 1-to-1. So, what would you rather do? Would you rather send that $1,700 to Uncle Sam and have it leave New York, or would you rather keep those dollars in New York and give that to a scholarship organization that could give a life-changing scholarship to a student in your community? I think, in my mind, there's just no question that this is going to be beneficial.
Well, that's absolutely right. And that's why I'm so excited that you could be on the program. Where can people find out more, not just about the scholarships, but find out more about Federation for Children?
Yeah, you can find us online at federationforchildren.org, and the EFTC for Education Freedom Tax Credit eligibility report is up there. So that's my research work, but there's also state-specific kind of snapshots. So these fact sheets that kind of run through and say, hey, here's what the scale of the opportunity could look like in New York. And just to kind of give you a little sense of that, I mean, if just 10% of taxpayers with $1,700 worth of liability on their federal taxes give in New York, I mean, that's an additional $500 million for education in New York State. So, I mean, that's a lot of money, and that's just going to continue to grow over time as people learn about this and realize, hey, I would much rather give for students instead of giving to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm so glad you could be on the program to tell people about this. We're just learning about it. I hope you can come maybe back on the program in the future when hopefully Governor Hochul signs on to the paperwork, and then we'll talk. How's that?
Yeah, would love to.
All right, thanks for joining us. All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.